What does going global mean for corporate innovation? Professor Helena Barnard is at GIBS, and you've been looking at this for the last 3 years in conjunction with the EU. They said some of our companies go global. Does it have any impact whatsoever on the innovation? What was the finding?
Well, companies have been going global for a very long time for production, but now they're going global for innovation. In other words, they're going global not just to the US or Canada, they're going global to developing countries, China, India, South Africa, Brazil. So they're starting to treat the old hands, starting to treat them as a head as well. And what does it mean in terms of competitiveness? Because Europe really likes to see itself as a knowledge economy. And what we found for the firms, and this is why the EU paid for the research, is that the large firms, the really good ones, benefit because they extend the pool of people from whom they can learn, and it helps them to be stronger even at home.
It's counterintuitive though, isn't it? Because you would think it's okay to have the brain power sitting in the manufacturing hub of a particular company. Apple, for example, designed in California, built in China. We're used to manufacturing happening in the poor parts of the world.
Absolutely. But these poor parts have, first of all, they're no longer that poor. They're growing economically, and they're growing technologically. They're growing in terms of the quality of the education systems. So they are now increasingly able to do innovation as well. And this puts the EU in a tough spot, because on the one hand you may choose to disengage from it because you don't want to grow your next competitor. Toyota got a lot of help from General Motors way back when. But on the other hand, do you want to disengage from a global network and really become marginal in the world economy?
What great examples have we got of these big multinationals who are not only manufacturing but are innovating in some of these markets?
You know, it's really the rule more than the exception. If we think of Ericsson has huge labs in
so
India.
What does Ericsson do?
Ericsson does cell phone.
Oh, right, okay. Now, again, they've fallen off the face. It's a lousy example, Helena. Who makes cell phones anymore? Ericsson? Do they even exist?
Well, they're doing extraordinary things, and a lot of the really interesting stuff is coming from the developing world. So Ericsson in South Africa is looking at applications of cell phones for mobile health. They figured out that one phone can have multiple numbers associated with it. Really a variety of interesting things that are now moving back into Europe. Ericsson in Sweden is now taking these ideas. The reason why they wanted multiple numbers for one phone was simply because we share phones here. We don't have a very wealthy population. In Ericsson, it's like, wow, you can have a number for your work on the same phone for work and separately for your private life. So these ideas are coming from the developing world, where there's a unique set of circumstances, and then going back into the developed world.
Forgive me for being picky here, but are these gimmicks that are being created to add on to the existing IP, or are we seeing any real IP creation in these developing markets?
I don't know if you want to call the creation of new medical equipment a gimmick or real IP creation, but those are the kind of things that GE is busy doing by tapping into Indian resources, both the educational, intellectual resources, but also looking at the need and how do you manage to meet the need in a poorer context. So what we find is that machines that are developed for a poorer market, sometimes, not always, but very often can actually be very useful in a developed market, and then you've got a very robust and low-cost machine.
And then also there's lots of production happening, and as these emerging markets become more productive and clever in the way they do business, they're outsourcing, and this makes a bit more sense to me with a traditional Western perspective, that they're outsourcing some of their innovation to the traditional innovation markets.
Absolutely. So what we're really seeing is that people are looking at the world and cherry-picking the best location for a given activity. So if it's manufacturing, it's most likely China. If it's IT software development, India is very hard to beat in terms of the sheer quantity of people out there. So what firms in South Africa are doing is they're looking at the world and they're saying, if I need X function performed, where can I best do it? So there was an assumption initially that you had to be an advanced multinational, a Toyota or GE, to really take advantage of this type of phenomenon. But what we're now seeing is that locations are chosen for a specific purpose in a very fine-grained way.
So is the EU very concerned about the way in which this is evolving?
There's so many things that are at play at this point. For the big firms in the EU, this is great because there's no doubt that they are benefiting. We also see in terms of R&D, the more you outsource your R&D, the stronger your R&D at home becomes. It's not a hollowing out kind of effect. The weaker firms struggle. So for the weaker firms, it is a risk. And then there are all kinds of other issues like we've got a whole movement against the carbon footprint. Why do we travel so far to perform activities? The EU, you've got neighbors who are very competent. Unlike in some of the developing countries where you have to go far, it's always easier to coordinate closer by. So it's such an emerging phenomenon that we're really not quite sure what to make from it, whether from the EU side or from the developing market side.
Professor Helena Barnard, she is a professor at GIBS.